Good morning and afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Employee Engagement. Does it really matter? My name is Max Smith. I'm the Director of Communications here at 501c Services. Real quick about us, Julie, if you could advance the slide. 501 has been around for 40 years. We provide full service unemployment outsourcing programs and HR to more than 3,000 nonprofits across the country. Some of our programs include the 501c Agencies Trust and 501c HR Services. 501c HR Services is a consultation service available to help organizations like yours walk through difficult personnel issues. And 501c Agencies Trust is an unemployment outsourcing solution for nonprofits. A whole bunch of you on today's program already work with us, so welcome back. Thank you for attending. Many of you on today's webinar are also new, so welcome to our program. We typically open up one webinar a month to non-members of our services, and so if you're here, this is a sampling, and you're not a customer of ours, this is a sampling of what our members get once a week at this program, at this time. Before I hand it over to our presenter today, Julie, I'm going to go over our housekeeping real quick. So everybody wants to know if we can get a copy of the slides. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, right there, and you go to a webinar window, there should be a button for attachments. You'll see a PDF. You can download them right now. Also, you will get an email an hour after we're done that will also have the slides available to you in that email. So if you're not seeing them in your browser, you can't find them, we will email them to you later today. If you're here for HR, CI, or SHRM credit, you all know how that works. At the conclusion of the program, a survey will pop up. You just fill it out for us, tell us that you want credit and what type of credit you want. We can even provide you with just a sort of a certificate of participation if you just want that. And we will get that back to you. So fill out that survey for us at the end of the program. If you have to jump for a meeting or go to lunch, that survey will also be in the post-event webinar going out later today. So just fill that out for us. We will try to get that to you tomorrow, most likely before the end of the week. With nothing else to cover, I'm going to hand this over to my friend Julie Gilbertson. Julie is a senior HR consultant with 501c Services, and she's one of the wonderful people that our members and subscribers deal with their HR issues. And earlier she couldn't find her cursor, but I think she's found her cursor and she's good to go. Good to go.
Oh, come on now. Thanks, Mac. Good morning, everyone. And so glad that you're here today to talk about engagement. As Max said, I work as part of the HR team, and I'm delighted to be presenting today for Sonia, who is normally your presenter for this particular training. And I'm real happy to do it because I love the topic. I also want to mention that I previously worked for a large nonprofit in California for almost 30 years. As the Chief HR Officer, so I have a lot of respect for the nonprofit world, and I'm so excited to welcome both those of you returning and any of you newbies who have never joined us for this. So thank you for being here, and I'm going to go ahead and jump on into the topic. So how do you define engagement, and why is it important? Well, perhaps I should even ask, why is employee engagement undervalued? I would define it as something that, engagement goes beyond satisfaction. It's something that rises above and beyond the basics. It's about understanding that what our employees do is important and knowing how and where they fit in the big picture. This is crucial for an engaged workforce. It's still a top priority with such a tight job market, right? Right now, keeping your talented, motivated employees performing at top levels should be a priority. Why, you might ask? Well, when employees are disengaged, they're at a greater risk of actively searching for another job, and we definitely don't want that, especially in this market. Studies show that more than 25% of your current workforce are thinking about or are actually currently looking for that next position. It's a challenge to find and then keep our top performers. Some organizations are better than others in developing and engaging their workforce, so we're going to talk about that today. How do those employers do it? Well, they build trust, they provide ongoing communication, and they help their employees see what they do daily actually guides their organizations to success. They're purpose-driven. Now, purpose-driven is when your nonprofit community has a leg up. And many employers find that these employees will choose their field and a particular organization based on their mission and vision. So that's a really great thing for all of you. What about those who landed their jobs by circumstance? Are you confident that these employees know what their purpose is and what your mission is all about? Do they understand and see how their job duties fit in with those you serve? Now, I heard that a CEO was asked a question. How many people worked at his company? So how many people work at your company? He hesitated a moment and then he responded with, about half of them. Well, that was not quite what I expected for a response. How about you? If someone asked you that question, how might you respond? How many of your staff are checked out, burned out, or sleepwalking through their jobs? Do you have a lot of absenteeism, workplace accidents, high turnover, and at what level? So think about which of the employees are least engaged, and we'll come back to that later. We do know that employees that are not engaged are really detrimental to your business, and you as a leader can't meet your objectives that are critical to a successful organization. So who's accountable and who's responsible for this engagement? Is it you, your staff, maybe HR? Well, I'd say we're all accountable. However, no plan or process matters if the organization's leaders aren't clued in and connected to the rest of the workers. Employee engagement does matter. And I suspect we all know that, or we wouldn't be here today. Now, I don't have a magic wand for you. However, in our time together, our goal is for you to walk out of here with at least one aha moment, or just something to spark further conversation. Today, we're going to take a big picture view with some basic information to clarify certain aspects and to also help get that conversation started. Maybe it's just a refresher for you, for those that have already started a program or made efforts to solidify engagement in your organization. Because of this topic, I'm really going to be looking for you to engage with me. So feel free to put your comments, your questions, your thoughts in the question box, and I will be asking you a few questions. So I'm hoping you'll participate. Now, first of all, think about your own personal current level of prioritizing employee engagement. And if you will, put that in the question box on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being very engaged and 1 not so much. Where would you rate yourself? I know that we it's something for us to think about. You can just jot it down yourself too. I see a 4 and a 3. Thank you for that. I think that, we have a lot to talk about today. Another 4, lots of 4s. That's great. I think that's wonderful. And I know for myself, I always feel like I can improve. So next, let's look at engagement and what does it mean? I know it means different things to different people. So what are some words or phrases that come to mind for you? And feel free again to use the question box in what engagement means, or what's a word that you would associate with engagement? And I'll go ahead and share those. Well, you have appreciation, commitment, Collaboration, culture, that's a good one. Interaction, joy, oh, I love that. Dedication, acknowledgement, support, involved. Oh my gosh, I love your input. Listening and responding. And I would add to that, active listening is so important. Praise and acknowledgement. We're finding surveys are saying that that can make for a much more engaged workforce, which means they're going to be more productive. So thank you for that. I'd like to think that there's three parts to engagement. There's the head, the heart, and the hands. Now, this is a useful metaphor that can guide your actions as a manager or supervisor. The head or the brain is thinking about the job and how to do it better. I'm mentally engaged in the work. The heart, my favorite part, is feeling positively about doing a good job. I'm emotionally engaged in the work and I'm excited about it. I don't know about you, but I get really excited about my work in HR, and I think that that's key. And finally, the hands, kind of self-explanatory, right? Just I'm engaged in doing the work. Now I want to add another piece of input that someone gave, which I liked, which was called taking risks. I think that's really important for engagement. So thank you for that. Now, who's responsible for engagement? I would say that engagement is a two-way street, isn't it? You might say it takes two to tango. So each one of us have to reinforce it with the other, don't we? We have to work together. And as leaders, we have to ensure that our employees are aware of not only the business context and where they fit in with the big picture, but have an understanding of the line of sight between their job role and purpose and then the objectives of your organization. It's our job to tie that all together. Now, you can connect employees' work by assuring that they have three critical pieces of information. And you're probably not surprised to think it's who we are, right? The organizations, your goals, your strategy, how you operate. Why we exist, which is your mission, vision, and value statements, and why it all matters. And how you, the employee, can help us succeed. So every employee needs to have that clear understanding of how their role and their job help achieve the mission. Well, let's talk about and think about who your best boss ever might be. And I'm hoping that it was not Michael Scott from The Office. This is Sonia's slide, and I think it's comical. So, but think about who your best boss ever might be. They probably were highly engaged with you, right? And you with them. Your best boss ever listened to you and really cared about what you had to say. Your best boss ever helped you to find your own solutions to questions that challenged you at the time. Your best boss ever cared about you personally and helped you plot a course for your own career growth and development. They held you to very high standards. They were fair and consistent. Your best boss ever at times might have expected more of you than you expected of yourself, or perhaps even believed you were capable of. Your best boss ever made you feel welcome and created an inclusive group and team experience. They had your back. I know I feel like that at work, and it makes a big difference. Now, what's the number one reason that employees quit their jobs? And you're right. I bet if you guessed, you would say that people join organizations, although employees leave their managers, don't they? They leave their boss. That's absolutely right, Matthew. And a recent survey said that 76% of employees believe their managers set workplace culture. So why does engagement even matter, right? Thinking back to your best boss ever, you know that it answers it, yes, it does matter. So if so, why? Well, study after study, report after report Article after article says very much so. The latest Gallup poll, though, said that less than 1/3 of the American workforce was truly engaged. Oof, well, that means that 70% is disengaged. That's huge. Think about what it would mean if our organizations reverse those numbers. Wouldn't that be awesome? Well, engagement affects the quality of services, doesn't it? We're all involved in the business of serving, whether it's children, teens, adults, the homeless, the addicted, or just the overall nonprofit community. When staff and volunteers are engaged, we see higher client satisfaction and loyalty, great client retention, and in many of our organizations, client success. Engaged employees also impact the cost and finances. There's better productivity and performance improves. We get increased employee retention, decreased workplace accidents and injuries, and more creative solutions to your workplace issues. In addition to that, your donors and your clients are going to see this when they visit. And importantly, it drives results. Employees take initiative, they take responsibility for their performance, they hold their coworkers to high standards. You have increased staff trust, which is so key. There's that willingness to go that extra mile, and they have a vested interest in the client's success. So increasing engagement should be a strategic priority. Let's take a look at the different types of employees. Now, according to Gallup, there's 3 types of employees. You have engaged, not engaged, and actively disengaged. That's a big one. So the engaged employee is loyal and productive. Share with me some other thoughts you have about engaged employees. You've done a little bit of this already, but what kind of behavior would you see with engaged employees? I know they can be rare and highly appreciated. You can probably see their faces if you think about it. I see it increases productivity, retains talent. It's about culture. Yes, it is. Highly committed and communicative, enthusiastic. They're happy, contagious, positivity. I love that. Energetic. They participate. They're productive, genuine, helpful, relationship focused. You guys are great. Take initiative, creative problem solving, helpful, cheerful, curious, and seek continued learning. They're present. Thank you for all of those. That's exactly right. More efficient. And there's so many benefits when your employees are engaged. It's not something we take for granted, right? So thank you for that. That was great feedback. Now, if we look at the disengaged employees, they're your average performers and your greatest untapped potential. So these employees can sometimes be hard to spot. They're not overly hostile or disruptive, and they're likely to do just enough to fulfill their basic job requirements. They might even be your sleepwalkers, uninspired and lacking motivation. They often don't know what's expected of them, and they don't ask for clarification. They also may not feel they have the resources they need to do their work effectively. And again, they might not let their supervisor know. So please remember to make sure that all employees receive coaching, training, and ongoing education. Otherwise, they're going to be tend towards absenteeism and sometimes increased workplace injuries. The actively disengaged are the worst. Gallup calls them the road warriors. Does anyone know what this term refers to, the road warriors? I love it. I think it's great. The road warriors are retired on active duty. Yikes. These are the scariest of the bunch and typically quite easy to spot, right? They're very vocal about it. Their moral is up there to damage your organization and hinder client progress. Not only unhappy, they're often intent on acting out their unhappiness so they can monopolize managers' time, and they may even drive away clients or other employees. They tend to undermine what those engaged employees accomplish. They can be toxic, and that toxicity is quick to spread, isn't it? Now, share with me some thoughts or a word that comes to mind when you think of these disengaged employees. And that would include those actively disengaged. I know they're pessimistic. Yep, self-centered. There's a lot of absenteeism. Commiserating. Oh, isn't that true? What do they say? Misery loves company. Bring others down. Yep, toxic. Culture wreckers. Isn't that the truth? And I do culture webinars, so I hope you'll come back and hear us again. They could make good employees want to leave the organization. Isn't that the truth? And I've seen that happen. If you don't address the disengaged or the toxic employees, you are at risk of losing very good employees. The know-it-alls. Yeah, that's another one. Sometimes they accept credit, but they're quick to blame. And they might just focus solely on their paycheck. So we really want to increase our engaged employees, don't we? Thank you for your feedback. This is awesome. It makes the webinar so much more fun. Now let's look at barriers to engagement. And before we go through my list, I'd like to see what barriers you might be facing in your organization. Just feel free to put it in there. I won't use your names, but it would be nice to hear what barriers you might think can happen or that you might have experienced in your career that are a barrier to engagement. And if you've overcome any, lack of trust, not understanding your organizational goals, overworking, very true. Focus solely on, we have to focus on all of them to that question, right? Staff working off-site, good point, especially in this hybrid environment that we're in, or folks working remotely. Very, very different, right? A little harder to engage. Staffing shortages is huge. Lack of actual face-to-face among teams. You don't get to know each other the same. Thank you so much. Culture differences. Yep. Lack of clear communication, assumptions, lack of trust, not enough support, poor management, age differences. Yeah, the different generations in the workplace can be beautiful if people are accepting of it. Time versus workload, huge, especially in this environment. So I know when I worked in the nonprofit world, staffing could be challenging. And when the pandemic first hit, it was really hard because there were people working remotely. We had people that were fearful. And so just trying to keep us all connected and reassured and acknowledging, oh my goodness, my heart goes out to you because this is a trying time, isn't it? It's wonderful, wonderful feedback. Thank you. I'm going to add to that now with the list here. Leadership. Now, gosh, I hate to see this on the list as a barrier. Leadership should be a plus, a positive. But unfortunately, sometimes leadership can be a big barrier. The leaders need to be committed to making the organization a great place to work. If the leaders don't buy in or believe it to be important to their job, you're going to have a lack of trust, of buy-in, of empathy, compassion, communication, and accountability, right? So are you holding your supervisors and managers responsible for engagement in their departments, in their programs? Are they rated on their performance appraisals on how engaged they are with their staff? Think back to your best boss ever. You want to be that kind of leader, don't we? Now, sometimes there's a lack of understanding and a shared definition of employee engagement. So This could be a barrier. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but you have to have a coherent story. Think about what engagement's like in your organization. What's it look like? Does it match your mission, your vision, your values? Why is it important? Well, you want to define it as an organization, make it realistic and attainable. Now, what about focus and alignment? That ties in with what I just said. Has anyone struggled here? Do you know what you want to measure or what you need to improve? And is it tied to your mission? Now let's talk about the measurement piece a little bit. How do you measure engagement? What tools will you use? Well, you can ask questions, right? You want to craft those to reflect your definition and your focus. And finally, communication, my favorite. Communication, like leadership, can be a plus or a minus, right? But it can be a big barrier, especially if there's not clear communication, constant communication, and consistent communication. Think back to the beginning of our time when I asked you what level of employees tend to be the least engaged. And I'd ask you, well, why is it that sometimes leadership tend to be the most engaged and line staff the least engaged? Well, I think I'd ask if they receive clear communication. Do they have access to information? Are you engaging with them? If this is a problem at your organization, how will you change that communication dynamic? How will you inform and keep the employees in the now? Well, you want to try to communicate in person as much as you can. And as someone pointed out, that's a challenge right now with this environment, isn't it? It's not quite the same, right? So when you can do it in person, please do. And if you can't, it's really important to still check in, do your Zoom calls or Teams meetings, or whatever you can to kind of see each other on video at least and keep that connection going. Get to know your staff, model that communication. And please remember the 3 Ps. Purpose. If your staff have a clear sense of purpose, they can endure more along the way if they understand the whys and the whats of your organization. Picture. Give people a vivid picture of what you're trying to create and what your mission is. Plan. A step-by-step plan helps keep staff confident in the process, and it makes them part of it. They're going to feel like it's inclusive. Now think about taking an activity to your management team, both the barriers exercise and the following exercise I'm going to show you before taking it to your program and department staff. Now, how do we do that? Well, let's define what engagement looks like in your organization. That's a start. And I'd like each of you to do this on your own. And secondly, what would you like it to look like? Think about that. Are they the same? Or do you have some suggestions? Are there gaps? Third, draft an engagement statement. This could actually be incorporated into your mission or values statement. Maybe you already have this for those of you that have been already working on your plan. Now, an example would be 501c services is committed to our members and will continue, and subscribers, and will continue to strive to ponder or to provide excellence in customer service. One more time. 501c service is committed to our members and subscribers and will continue to strive to provide excellence in customer service. Just an example. Now, I'm a visual person, so for those of you who are as well, I want to show you this diagram, which is a model of impact of employee engagement on your employee performance. The 3 green boxes contain components that must be in place to have a high level of employee engagement. And then you get that high-performing employee and high-performing team. We've spent a little time in some of these areas, but you might need to spend more time as well. But, you know, we talked a little bit about leadership, but there's also that career and development training compensation. You have your team and coworker relationships and your workplace well-being. There's the work environment, and then your policies and procedures are also really important. If I like this model, it'll be in your slides, and I hope it's helpful. Now, how do you know if your staff's engaged? We've defined engagement, and we know why it's important, right? We've discussed our barriers and talked about drafting our own engagement statement. So let's go back to this. How do you know if your staff's engaged? Well, pretty simple. Ask them. Now, it sounds simple, but we got to think about this, okay? Like I said, you want to be really careful to make sure that if you ask them, you take action, right? Now, we have some examples here of questions. I have a set of 10 that are broken down into 3 categories: 3 essential questions, 5 magic questions, and 2 open-ended questions. And I'll explain more what that 5 magic questions really means. These are just suggestions to get the conversation started, and they might fit into your organization and they might not, but you can work off these and kind of get an idea if you haven't done this already. So we're trying to give you just some examples. Here's 3 essential questions that are very basic. It's easy to become absorbed in my job. I would recommend my organization as a great place to work. And I can tell you this is a super common survey questions for employees at in the nonprofit world. We used it in my previous work, and it was important because you usually got a little more information on that one. Most days, I look forward to coming to work. So those are kind of essential, just foundational questions for you. In your appendix, you'll find another set of 12 questions you can ask. And some are good. They're and valid, they're just different. So you can take a look at that. Now I have a disclaimer for you about this employee engagement survey. It only takes one survey to destroy any trust and transparency you've worked to develop. So keep in mind, if you remember nothing else, that if you aren't going to act on the information you receive, you really don't want to do this. You don't want to waste people's time, and you set kind of an expectation, right? If you do this and then do nothing, in other words, like set it and forget it, the culture in your organization won't stay the same. It could actually get worse. By asking someone for their feedback, whether it's about work, culture, your environment, the workload, or where to go to lunch, you imply that you care about what they have to say, and you create this expectation that you're going to do something based on what they share. You make an implicit promise to acknowledge and take action based on their feedback. When you don't act on what your employees have told you are the most important issues, discouragement and resentment can flourish. Think of those actively disengaged employees again, spreading their toxicity, right? And then employees might think, well, why should I invest in an organization that just dismisses my input? Why should I? Don't destroy morale and motivation. I think I've talked about that enough now. So my advice is start slowly. Don't send out some big, huge, long survey. I know in the past experience that I've had, if it was too long, people get discouraged and they might not even complete it. So start small, perhaps incorporating a question or 2 in the performance appraisal process. Somehow that you can get that conversation started. So now we've looked at the 3 essential questions. Let's look at the 5 employee engagement questions that measure the drivers of engagement. And I love this model. So these are the magic questions I referred to earlier. So M is for meaning. My job provides me a sense of meaning and purpose. A, autonomy. I have the freedom to choose how to best perform my job. G is growth. I feel challenged and stretched in my job in a way that results in personal growth. and impact. Most days I see positive results because of my work. C, connection. I feel like I belong here. And someone asked, can you preface the survey with the proposed timeline? Oh, absolutely. So typically when I've done surveys in the past, you kind of talk about it with your teams first, let them know that's going to be coming out. You provide them the survey, and typically you want to give folks a couple weeks to complete the survey, and then maybe after the first week put out another friendly reminder to say we're really looking forward to your feedback. It matters. Don't forget to complete your survey. The other thing you can do, which we did in my past job, which I loved, was we did a little incentive. So we said whichever teams, we had 10 programs and 20 sites. So we did something surrounding pizza parties. So whichever group got their surveys in first was awarded a pizza party. And then we tried to do some kind of little thank you to everyone that participated. So just an idea for incentives. Great question. Thank you so much, Holly. Now, 2 open-ended employee engagement questions. I'll say something about that. Studies have found that more than 2 fill in the blanks doesn't necessarily give people more information. Like I said earlier, if it's too long, folks are probably not going to do it. This could slow down the process and take longer to complete, or it maybe just doesn't get done. So 2 is kind of the sweet spot. Now, when you ask these questions, like I said, you want to act on them. So here we go. What are the greatest strengths of our organization? And what are the areas that need the most improvement? Real basic foundational questions, right? But an opportunity for employees to really share. I think you can really gain a lot of knowledge with these questions. So make a plan with your staff and make sure that your survey results gets into the hands of your frontline supervisors. And maybe start with those high risk level employees too. And don't forget to use stay interviews as well. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with stay interviews, I love them. Feel free to put a comment in the survey after the webinar, and I'll be very happy to circle back with you and provide you some resources and a little more information. But stay interviews are a great retention tool. It's kind of like prefacing your exit interviews. Instead of waiting till your great employees walk out the door and you're asking an exit interview about what went well and what, where the gaps lie, you do this while they're working for you. You can incorporate it with your performance appraisal, or even, regularly check in with them. How are things going? How are you enjoying your job? What can we do to support you? So a little sidebar on that. Now, you might say, now what? Remember that engagement is about people, relationships, shared responsibility, alignment of individuals and the whole organization. It's about work environment, staff development. Hopefully it's an inclusive culture that supports diversity and creativity and provides opportunities for professional development. It's also about continuous, open, honest communication. And it allows employees to be authentic, vulnerable, and feel and build trust. In other words, let's put everyone in the right seat on the right bus, right? Kind of a fun way of looking at it. Sometimes you can have this great employee. I remember one time in my past work, we had this employee that thrived in a position, was really great, and an opportunity came up in another department. He applied for it and got it and totally bombed. It was not a good match for him. We found out that he wasn't in the right seat. So, sometimes then you have to reevaluate and go, okay, let's see if there's still room for you back where you were before, or just make sure that folks have the right tools and the right resources to, improve in that position. Create a safe and comfortable environment. You want to be approachable, right? You want your staff to be able to talk to you. And as an employee, we want to be able to talk to our supervisors openly and honestly. Get to know your staff. Now, we've talked about this a little bit, right? You gotta get to know them, so it's not just show up, punch a time clock and so forth. Now, what about asking them how to improve? That's wonderful. That's a great question. Thank you for that, Rachel. Absolutely. Let go of negativity. Be sure to watch out for those toxic employees, and you have to address them, because otherwise, as someone so kindly said, you'll risk losing the good employees, right? Give them the knowledge, training, and tools. In other words, remove obstacles so they can do a good job and that they look forward to coming to work each day. Now, make sure they have ongoing coaching and training, not just, that new hire orientation process, but throughout their time with you, make sure that they get the ongoing coaching and acknowledgement and recognition. And then to go back to what you said about asking them how to improve, ask them how you're doing in their eyes. Now, you have to be vulnerable to do that, right? But don't we all want to be better leaders? So ask them how things are going for them and how you can better support them. Because certainly if we support them better, they will do a better job. Now, let's review how you get started creating a culture of engagement. You want to make sure your leadership, top to bottom, is committed to building trust, communication, transparency, and action. You want to define and redefine your mission to fit your employees, not to just those you serve. You want it to fit your employees and your clients and participants. Ensure everyone knows what their purpose is and how they make a difference. You could tie that to your value statements too. And I know in the past we did a process and we included all levels of employees, from line staff up to the board, to help us define our value statements. And that was a great process. So there was good ownership there. Create with your employees a shared definition of engagement. And then you want to remember to check in and communicate. Follow through, and make no mistake, building and or enhancing your culture of engagement takes time and commitment. And the worst mistake you can make with big damage is to start the process and not follow through. Now, communication, it's kind of like real estate. It's all about location, 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 right? Well, your success is going to really be, and your employee engagement is really going to be about communicate, communicate, communicate. You can't do it enough, and you need to be consistent with all of the staff, right? Now, rotate that dredge work. What does that look like? In the past, at the nonprofit I worked at, we had an adult daycare center, and part of the work was the personal care. Those of you that work in that field are probably very familiar. Not your most favorite work. So we found that one person was always in charge of the personal care. And what we did is we decided to rotate that through with all of the staff in that department, so that one person didn't really just come to work going, oh no, here we go. So try to rotate that where you can. In all areas, as much as possible, discuss engagement. Keep that topic alive. Empower your top performers. You want to pay attention to them, and you want to acknowledge them and empower them. Reward and recognize your employees. A couple people mentioned that in the question box, and I appreciate that. It is so key. Now, many of us can feel good about our work on our own. And we just have job pride, right? So we don't need tons of accolades. But I'll tell you what, everyone really needs to be recognized and thanked for the work and the contributions that they do. Otherwise, they might feel like it doesn't really matter. And most importantly, be consistent and keep your promises. In other words, if you ask for input, we can't always give everyone everything they want, but talk about it, explore different ideas, and follow through on those gaps. Try to bridge those gaps where you can. Now, in a nutshell, we've covered a lot of ground today, and you've been really great at participating, and I appreciate that. And you have other comments or thoughts, keep going. We're not done yet, but I just want to thank you for that. I hope I've provided you with some things to think about and to maybe bring to your teams, and some ideas and tools to consider for improving your employee engagement. Now, before we wrap things up with the rest of the slides, think back to when I asked you to rate yourself, to think about where you are in terms of prioritizing engagement. I don't know if you want to share, feel free. I don't need to use your names. But where are you on prioritizing engagement? Have you thought about it? This might be fairly new to you, and you might think, I do need to pay attention to that. I'm hopeful that if you rated yourself a 1, 2, or 3, and I know some of you already did, we had a lot of 3s and 4s, which was awesome, that perhaps you have some new thoughts and ideas to take with you and share with your coworkers, your teams, maybe your supervisors. Hopefully now you've rated employee engagement as an important and strategic goal. Now I have a few more resources for you too. There's an appendix with, it's including the more definitions of employee engagement, and certainly there's a ton out there. If you Google it, you're gonna find all kinds. Another set of employee engagement survey questions from Gallup, and then Maslow's hierarchy of needs in regards to the workplace. Some of you might be very familiar with it, but I like it. It's a nice resource. So here's some definitions for you, different examples, and you might have your own. Now, I know someone's commenting they love more ideas on addressing actively disengaged and toxicity. I think, you know, a lot of times it's a performance problem, and you need to meet with those individuals and really take them aside, find out what's working for them and what's not, and hold them accountable. Maybe you have weekly check-ins. I know in the past we did this with an employee that we were just having a lot of issues with, and it turned out that they were having some major challenges at home. It just, you know, it's just difficult. And so they were acting out at work. So we were able to provide them resources, an employee program that would support them, like an EAP, an employee assistance program. Also, some just aren't a good fit. And so going back to this slide for someone that's asking. And so sometimes they're just not a good fit, and you have to help them either improve or help them on their way out the door, because it just can have such a huge impact to your whole workforce. It's not easy, is it? And it's very tricky. And I would say I'd be very thoughtful about it. I would document things. I would potentially put them into a training so that they can learn some different skills and know that you take it seriously. It's hard too, because sometimes other employees feel like you're not doing anything, and you can't really go to them and say, oh, well, I wrote this person up, or I'm sending them to a training. But you just have to reassure the other employees that you take it seriously and you're addressing it. It's confidential. But feel free to put
something in the survey if you want to further discuss this, and I'd be happy to talk to you about that a little bit more, okay? It's a really important question, so thank you for putting that in there. Okay, well, hopefully I gave you enough time on this slide. If not, you're going to get a copy of the slides too, so feel free to holler on the survey if you have further questions. Now back to the definitions. I think a lot of great ones. I like this middle one, a business management concept that describes the level of enthusiasm and dedication a worker feels towards his or her job, right? If you want to feel jazzed, I've always been excited about my workday. Engaged employees care about their work and about the performance of the organization, and they feel that their efforts make a difference. And you know, I think that's more important than people sometimes give it credit for. So that's just one of the many examples. You see, you know, several others. Now let's look at some more sample engagement questions. This set deals with individual needs. And again, these are just ideas for you. It's kind of nice to have a starting place, and then you can talk to your supervisor, management team, board, however you want to create your own survey. This one, you know, includes things like, I know what's expected of me at work. In the past 2 weeks, I've received recognition and or constructive guidance, which is good too. Sometimes like, how do I do better? What do I do? Well, you're very welcome. It's good to know, you know, people want to feel cared for. So that's more about the individual needs. And then this slide speaks to the team orientation. So more of a focus on the team. My coworkers are engaged and committed to doing quality work. I hope a lot of people feel that way. At work, my opinions and ideas seem to count. And again, you know, it's important to get that feedback. Think outside the box. It's amazing to see the various ideas you can get at every level in the organization. And I love that. Sometimes you'll have someone that has ideas every week and they're not always reasonable. And so, you know, setting expectations there can be challenging because you can't always give them a personal refrigerator or whatever they think they need in their section. But yeah, it's fun to hear from people, and it's important that they feel safe asking questions and making suggestions. Now we have a set of questions that deal with professional growth. Now, I had an employee years ago that was perfectly happy where she was. She didn't want to get promoted. She didn't want to learn new things. And she was real good at what she did, but she was very comfortable and maybe a little too comfortable. But this wasn't huge on her priority list. Other things were more important to her. I venture to say, though, that a lot of us really like professional growth. And so these are questions that focus on that. My manager discusses my performance and progress with me several times a year and checks in to see if there's anything they can do to make my job easier. I think that what the beauty of these different questions for me is that you're going to catch someone's eye in each section, where one person, this professional growth topic is going to be really important. For someone else, it's maybe about their individual needs. So have a variety. That way you're going to perk interest across the board. Now, the last slide I have is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I'm sure for those of you that have been in the industry for a long time, you're familiar with this, especially if you've worked in HR. For someone new to HR, you might also be aware of this, but I find it a really great tool. It breaks down here, this pyramid breaks down the different types of employees that we've talked about. I like in the middle, it has almost engaged. I think that's kind of cool. It's like, okay, they're kind of there, but not quite, right? So you need to work with them to build them up a little. But it talks about really what's going on and also the behavior associated with these different types of engaged employees. They have a direct impact on engagement as well as the organization's bottom line. So it's really important. I hope you find this helpful. And we're getting close to the end of our time together. And I just want to put it out there if you have any other questions, comments, suggestions for me, any feedback in how you have made your organization more engaging. And if you think of things later, as Max said, there'll be a survey at the end, probably in about an hour. So feel free to put it out. Gosh, I hadn't thought about this. Put that on there. When you pay attention to your survey, it's important to me personally to know what's working, what you enjoyed, and maybe what I can improve on. So I'm always a work in progress. So thank you for your feedback. I really want to acknowledge all of your participation. It was amazing and really, really good feedback from everyone. You guys get this. I can tell it's important to you. And that means that at your organizations, you're really valued because you're going to be getting other people engaged and jazzed about their work, good communication. Again, with the environment right now, both having this pandemic and having some folks remote as I am, and others that have this hybrid schedule, really making engagement and connectedness priorities are so huge. It's important. You don't want to lose anybody along the way. So thank you for attending. Thank you for your participation. If you're interested in any of our other webinars, we have a couple more coming up here shortly. Maureen is going to be providing a webinar on dealing with change on July 21st. And as I mentioned before, I will be doing the value of cultivating culture part 1. It's a 2-part series on July 28th. So we hope that you sign up for those. I hope to see you again. Thank you so very much. Watch for the survey. You'll be able to request credits or certificate of attendance. And have a really great week. Thank you so very much. Appreciate all of you and the work that you do with the community. Super valuable. So thank you. Have a great day.